always, willing to listen. I'm never will be. I'm not that type of person. Just shuts everything out and says, well, hey, it's either my way or the highway. I like, you never know what people really want until you hear it. I can't read minds. So, let's talk about Mcduff. Enough of that. Thank you. So, he was suspected of killing at least 14 people. And he did serve time on death row from 1968 to 1972. I'm just looking at my notes. And then again in the 90s. But there's the funny thing. In between, somehow he was paroled because of the messed up Texas prison system and was released in 1972. So then, oh, that's right. Okay, so he actually got paroled. He got off death row in 72. Then he was paroled completely in the 90s, in 1990. Now, he was born March 24th, 1946. He was from Central Texas and had 3 siblings. Lonnie, which he was closest to, was his brother, who also was not such a upstanding citizen. Mcduff's mother, Addie Mcduff, was well known around town as the pistol-packing mama because she always had a pistol with her or firearm and had violent tendencies, usually to protect her children because she believed they were always right. Matter of fact, the theory and the thought process in the Mcduff house was, if you believe it, it is the truth. If you said it, it is what was said. If that's what you did, then it's what should have been done. So with that kind of narcissistic thinking, that all-encompassing, hey, I'm right and you're always wrong, my kids are right no matter what, no wonder they grew up to be such a problem, especially Mcduff. Mcduff especially was catered to and, was said to have a low IQ between 90 and 78, depending on what test you took and who you talked to. So, she did not help his situation or the development of his personality. Mcduff was known to shoot his .22 rifle at living creatures and was often getting into fights with boys older than he was. With these tendencies, he was well known by the sheriff of his hometown. However, one time, there was a boy who did say, "I've had enough of your crap. I'll meet you down underneath the bridge after school," which Mcduff, always being a big, bad kind of guy that it just intimidated people with his, just sheer size, basically got there thinking that he was gonna kick the crap out of this guy and this guy could fight. And he never messed with him again or anybody at that school. But he did become the big bad wolf. That is one thing he did achieve. Nothing else. He didn't hold a job for more than 3 weeks. He never finished school. He quit in 9th grade. And he couldn't hold a friend for more than 3 or 4 weeks. But he did succeed in becoming the big bad wolf. So, before any of his murder convictions, he was convicted of 12 counts of burglary and attempted burglary. He was then sentenced to 12 4-year prison terms, served consecutively. However, he was paroled 9.5 months later in 1965. I'm terrible, I can't see a thing. On the night of his first murders, Mcduff and his new friend, Royaldale Green, were driving around Central Texas because it was very rural and he kept talking about killing people and how much fun it would be to kill somebody or rob this place bit slow mentally. So, that's who he hung out with. McDuff always hung out with people that he could kind of manipulate and take advantage of. So as they were driving around, they came across a parked car near a baseball diamond. Inside the parked car were 2 men and a woman. Robert Brand, his girlfriend, and Edna Louise Sullivan, and his cousin Marcus Dunham. Now, in this part of Texas where this baseball field was, it was a very, very rural area. So that's what he was kind of looking for. He was kind of looking down roads that were really rural, really in the country, so he could find some people to hurt, to kill. I mean, he was serious at this point. He had basically gotten out of 12 4-year prison terms and did 9.5 months. So he felt, hey, let's kill somebody. Let's see what I can do next that nobody will punish me for. And then, so on this night, the 2 men approached the vehicle. Now, this is August 6, 1966. So on this summer night, Robert Brand and his girlfriend and his cousin were all sitting in the car, kind of chatting and talking, maybe listening to music, in this 1957 Ford. McDuff and Green, following him, had grabbed his .22 caliber pistol and started to approach the car, sneaking up on the 3 young kids. As the 2 men approached the vehicle, they ordered the 3 people into the trunk of both cars. McDuff and Green drove both of the cars to a remote area where both men were shot in the head. So the 2 cousins, McDuff had taken them out and had basically execution style killed them for no reason, just because he wanted to kill somebody. And all the while, Green is like, what are you doing? Oh my god, did you just kill 2 people? And he's like, yeah, now I'm gonna rape and kill this other one. So apparently on the way to, find these people, anybody, it didn't matter who it was, it just happened that these unlucky young kids were the victims. He had grabbed this broomstick that was broken off on the end. So he proceeded to take the girlfriend out and put him in his car. After he killed the 2 boys, he kind of pushed the 1957 Ford up against a fence and tried to hide it, hoping that nobody would notice that it was there. Till he, I guess, could think of a alibi. I don't know. So that did not happen, by the way. So he takes this young girl and he makes her get in the back seat of his car, drives to even more remote location and rapes her for a couple hours. Not only does he rape her and sexually assault her, but he uses the broomstick to, I'm sure you can use your imagination, and to the point of where she's saying, stop it, please stop it. I think you punctured something. And it almost gave him more pleasure to see her in so much pain. He then took her out of the car. Well, first he made Mr. Green, Royaldale Green, rape her, and he said, I don't want to. He said, do it. And he put the gun to his head, but he didn't have any bullets, and I don't think Roy was even thinking that he was out of ammunition. He was just didn't want to end up like those 2 kids. And he does, and he's like, okay, can we go now? And he said, sure, come on, get her out of the car. So at this point, Roy's like, okay, he's just gonna leave her alone, and we're gonna go home, and everything is gonna be terrible, but not as bad. said to Green, get your ass over here and hold her legs down. She's kicking the crap out of me. So he did as he was told and held her legs down, and then realized like this is a real person. He got to jump back, and Mcduff was like, no, grab her legs and keep them. Don't not let go. And the second time he did, he realized, oh my god, she's dying. And it freaked him out even more, and he just could feel the life leave her body. So he pulls her into, Mcduff pulls her into the woods, and just to make sure that he did kill her, he kept strangling her, and he wanted to shoot her, as he said, but he had no more ammunition. He had used all of his ammunition upon the two boys he had killed earlier. So he dumps her and puts her in a shallow grave underneath a tree in a very rural area. Roy Dale Green was so upset about this, he actually thought they drove a mile when they drove 11 miles. That's how upset he was. The following day, when the murder was announced on the radio, Green felt guilty and turned himself into the police. Hysterical. I mean, he just didn't feel guilty. He was hysterical. In exchange for testimony against Mcduff, he was giving a lesser sentence. Still, 25 years. But the problem was here is that he was known as a rat, and the inmates tortured him to the point of where he couldn't sleep. He was seeing things, he was hearing things. Green had to be moved to a mental institution for the rest of his sentence. So, Mcduff went to trial and was sentenced to death for the murder of Robert Brand only. As a result of the suspension of the death penalty in 1972 and the overcrowding in Texas prisons, many prisoners were not serving out their full sentences, and as a result, Mcduff was given parole in October 1989. Now here in the 89, 90s, they were so overcrowded, and this parole wasn't just parole, they were literally secretly releasing hundreds of prisoners just off death row out of prison into society without the citizens knowing this, which was very scary. And when they found out, parents were afraid to leave their kids at the school. They were afraid to leave them at the bus stop. They were afraid to take them to the mall, to go to the playground. They were scared out of their minds, which they should have been. Now, one of McDuff's couple things that were based upon his parole, because he had been denied parole 13, 14 times, something like that. Ridiculous. Finally, I'll give him one thing he does pursue, and he's very persistent. So he gets out and doesn't follow a single term of his parole. I mean, literally, he's taken back to prison I don't know how many times, but of course he's released, and he just keeps robbing, stealing, killing. There was this young black prostitute that was found murdered and strangled. Now, she was never connected to Mcduff, but it was a little strange. 2 weeks after he was out of prison, she was found dead right where he was staying. Now, so unfortunately, as a result of his parole in 1989 October, he's never officially connected to any other suspects at the time. Mcduff victim was Sarafia Parker, whose body was found just 3 days after Mcduff's release from prison. Okay, 3 days. I'm sorry. Although released on parole, Mcduff made no attempt to show he had reformed. Like I was saying, he was convicted of making threats and trying to pick fights with others. Again, the town bully. He did achieve to become the big bad wolf. and even for public drunkenness and DUI. And this is where he began drinking heavily. He became addicted to crack cocaine and to cocaine in general. And he said that was the worst thing that ever happened to him, because this made a mean man even meaner, with even less of a conscience, to the point of where it was like skinning a possum, as one officer had said. During a roadblock in 1991, a woman with her hands behind her back was seen attempting to kick out the windshield of a car and was never seen alive again. Now, this poor woman was a prostitute that he had picked up, and because she was Mcduff got the crazy. It's just a prostitute. She's so high, she's just freaking out because she wants more dope. Well, that wasn't the case, and her body was not found until 1998. So, she was later identified as prostitute Brenda Thompson. Only a few days later, another prostitute, Regina Gino Moore, vanished. In December 1991, Mcduff and a close friend, Alva Hank Worley, were driving around looking for drugs. Worley later testified that Mcduff would point out specific women along the street that he would like to take, meaning quote unquote. That night they saw Colleen Reed, an accountant. She was washing her car at the car wash, and Mcduff grabbed her and forced her into the car. Both men raped the woman, and although witnesses called the police, they were too late. Mcduff dropped Worley off and later disposed of the body. So, now while at work, so obviously he's not listening to his parole officer at all. I mean, he doesn't care. That theory that his mother had instilled in him since he was a little kid was to, if you believe it, it must be true. If you say it, it must be what you said. And if you did it, that is what should have been done. Odd enough, his parents were actually middle class at this point. They had started off and worked hard. They both were business owners, very entrepreneurial, hard workers. I mean, his father worked constantly, then started his own concrete business, and they actually lived in the end in a very good part of town and made good money because they worked so hard. But having come from nothing, they wanted to give their kids everything, and the mindset that they gave them was, you could do no wrong and you don't have to work. Mcduff was known for going down the street with not a dollar in his pocket and getting drugs and hookers or prostitutes, whatever he wanted. And just people, it was called Texas was basically Mcduff's law. That's what they called it. That's scary to me. I don't know about you, but if laws are based upon what a serial killer or narcissistic human being is, I'm afraid. I don't want to live anywhere near there. Now, when he was paroled, of course he was paroled, and he lived in the part of town called the Cut, or the Corner, or wherever it was off Route 35, as it goes through Waco, Texas. And it was just known for the drugs and the drinking and the illegal activities that were going on down there. The police wouldn't even go. You could stop at the stop sign and people would bring you anything you wanted. Girls would hop in the car. I mean, there was no laws. Basically, it was the Wild West of Waco. And that's where Mcduff hung out. And the funny thing is, he would get a friend, use him for a few weeks, and the people who were probably the least, how do I say this? The least accountable citizens of the entire city would get tired of him. They couldn't stand Mcduff. He was mean. He was a bully. He was a thief. He would burglarize anybody. He would steal anything. He would take anybody's dope. He would take anybody's woman. He didn't care. He had nothing, no kind of self-control, respect, or any kind of control over himself because of how he was raised. Again, I do blame the mother for that because it could do no wrong. I mean, she would just start fights on and down about how her perfect her son was, and he just could not have possibly done this in court. Just went on and on and on. Our son could not have done this. And her son Lonnie was pretty much, he didn't kill anybody that we know of, but he wasn't a nice guy. He was, a methamphetamine dealer and just not a good productive citizen either. I guess if you want to say that he sold drugs, at least he did something. I don't know, but they did more than his brother. And less. I mean, he didn't do as much. But, so, then, at this point, Mcduff had fled Texas. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, my notes. A month later, the body, so after Colleen Reed was kidnapped, a month later, the body of Melissa Northrup was discovered. Around the same time, another body was found in the woods. Her name was Valencia Gay Joshua, a prostitute who was last seen searching for Mcduff's dorm room. At this point, Mcduff had to flee Texas, attained a new car and fake ID. He became a garbage collector. Okay, so he did have a job for at least 3 weeks. Soon after Melissa Northrup's body was found, he was profiled on America's Most Wanted with Mr. Walsh. And I'm sure everybody knows what Unsolved Mysteries is and why it is called, why it is here today. I mean, that was basically the first real America's, Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries. That was the first TV show that really put out a number where people call and give information that was kept confidential and didn't feel like they were being a rat or they would get in trouble or, their family killed if they were caught. It was completely a safe way to let the authorities know what was going on. So now he's left Texas. Only a day later, a co-worker connected. So after this airing of On America's Most Wanted, only a day later, a co-worker contacted the police to tell them where to find him. He was pulled over during a garbage stop and became America's Most Wanted, a 208th successful capture. During the first trial involving the death of Northrup, he was rude and disruptive. And that's how he was always. And even in school, same thing. He tried to represent himself but could never provide truthful accounts of the night the woman was killed. And that was one thing that always got him in trouble, his ego. That same kind of theory that his mother had given him to live by, the golden rules of Mcduff, basically. But he was gonna get on, and even his mom at this point was like, oh, shut up, you need to just let your attorneys talk. But he didn't, because he was always right. And maybe that's a good narcissist for you. If you let them dig their own grave, which he did. So he was sentenced to death for the murder of Melissa Northrup. Following that trial, he then tried for the murder of Colleen Reed and was more disruptive this time around. Although her body was never found, he was convicted of killing her based on strong circumstantial evidence and eyewitnesses' accounts. He was again sentenced to death, so this time he's not getting off death row. Following his arrest, Texas began an overhaul to ensure that no other criminals like him were able to get out on parole. Basically, Texas went from really for the death penalty, really against the death penalty, just because they had too many prisoners, and some insane number of money was dumped into the administration. I mean, there was a Democratic governor at the time, and she just was like, okay, $66 billion or some crazy amount of money, and just, just to build prisons to keep, because really of McDuff. And money could have been used for other things. I think that was a little excessive. However, nothing like this was going to happen again, because it really did. I mean, he messed up so many people's lives and hurt so many people in so many ways, and it was all because of the prison system failing the people, the citizens that paid their taxes, that were good people, that loved people, that had families, that went to work, that provided good homes, and that were good citizens. And really, that's who Texas should have been thinking about the whole time, but instead they were just thinking about all the grief they were getting from all these prisoners being so unhappy. And they just, and one gal had even said, why is it that somebody arrested with a couple oxycodone is given 25 years, and yet murderers are let free? And that's what has started to happen. I'm not sure how that got confused, because if it were me, I would definitely be like, okay, we'll let the non-violent offenders out first. Okay, you sell drugs, you haven't killed anybody, you haven't stabbed anybody, you've never been a problem, you you go to work, whatever, you go, okay? I definitely would have taken people off the death row and then let those guys out. But that's what happened, serial killers, and the fact that his mother had basically made him this narcissistic animal just by giving him no laws except for his own. There was no rules, there was no golden rule, there was no, compassion for anybody else but himself. So that, the ideology that he grew up thinking about and living with and believing in became his gospel. There was even a church that his parents attended and that he attended that there was never any accounts of anybody doing a sermon or actually reading the Bible. So I found that interesting too. But thank you for listening. I appreciate all of your likes, your comments, and I hope you enjoyed this very interesting kind of horrific tale of events and how it all unraveled, how it even got to this, because all of this could have been prevented after those three killings in the beginning could have been prevented, because he was really sentenced to all the robberies he did way before he did any killing. I mean, it was insane. I mean, he had like 91 years or 200 years, something like that. I can't remember what it was. But then the judge sentenced him to 4.5 years, which he served 9.5 months for. That's insane. If he would have just served out those 4, 5, 6 years, I mean, think of those kids could have been saved. How many people could have been saved? And if he just did 20 years, I mean, he just robbed, and, just for that, he should have been in prison for a long time. And that all could have prevented this monster from being ever allowed to get near anybody he could hurt. So that is the story of Mcduff. If you want to read more, I will leave my source. So, but my main source, I read this book that was very, very good, and very, very detailed. So I had to just take basic notes, or we'd be here for 6 hours, probably. It was very good. It was very detailed. It kind of gave a very clear idea of what was going on in Texas and where he lived and the kind of person he was, and his parents and his sister and brother, and just a lot, very detailed. I really enjoyed reading the book, and I will leave that at the bottom. So thank you for subscribing, thank you for commenting, liking, and just viewing my videos. I enjoy making these so much, enjoy corresponding with anybody and everybody. I love listening to your point of views. I find them fascinating. So, even if it's a solved case, I'd still like to hear what you think. How you think that could have been prevented. If it could have been prevented, whatever you think, I'd love to hear. And I will always respond. So, just send me. I know there's a way you can email me. alltruecrimeasmr@gmail.com, and then of course you can always